Great. So this is EA for Christians, week 42 of our weekly discussions. And this week's discussion is on the topic, making EA work in everyday life. So one motivating factor for this week was this verse I was reading the other week. This is in 1 John 3:17-18, where John writes, "If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or a sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." And it's this phrase, actions and in truth, that really got to me. And I know we talk a lot about ways of helping the world, and they may be true ways of helping the world, but if we don't put it into action, then it's not really doing much good. So this week, we'll be looking at this question of how do we make EA work in everyday life? It'll be a little bit more practical than normal, though for many of us, I'm sure not practical enough. And I apologize in advance ahead of time. And I want to look at three different ways we might think about this. The first is making our giving work in everyday life. The second is making more effective career choices and use of time in everyday life. And third, being an example for others. And just a quick disclaimer, I'm really not exemplary in any of these ways. And if you take giving, like I personally don't give as much as I should. And if you take career, like I don't have a plan A track career. And I'm not always the best example for others. So do as I say, not as I do in this case. And so many people in this room have so much to share about these. So I really encourage you to speak up in the breakouts, because I would love to hear what you have to say. So starting with giving, the first goal I think around making giving work in everyday life is to be taken over by a sense of excitement about effective giving and a sense of gratitude in general. And I think the first way that we do this is really through faith, right? So this is an EA for Christians group, and most of us, I think, come to the table already with this sense of understanding that it's our faith that motivates us to do good in the world. And we love, as it says in John, because Christ first loved us. And I think if we remember where we came from, it helps us direct where we're going. And if we continue to pursue this relationship with Jesus, and we continue to be thankful and grateful for all that he's done for us and all that we can do for him, I think that puts us in the right mindset for our giving. But a second how that I would give for maintaining a lifestyle of exciting and effective giving is to follow a few more practical things. So keep track of how much you currently save, currently spend. Another thing you can do is focus not on how much you give, but how much you keep. We know this story that Jesus tells of this Pharisee who goes to the temple, and he donates quite a lot of money into the offering pot. I think it's like a gold coin or something, but we can imagine somebody today giving thousands of dollars, or the Bill Gates of the world giving millions or billions of dollars away. That's kind of like this Pharisee that Jesus mentions. And then he also contrasts that with this widow who just very meekly puts a coin, or what little she has, in the offering pot, but it was so much more of all that she had. And Jesus asked the disciples, who do you think is more commendable? And they answer rightly and say the widow. So I think this shifts the paradigm, and I think it's helpful for us because no matter where we're coming from, we can always think about what we do with what we have. So focusing not on how much we give, but how much we keep, but that's within all of our control. And we can always challenge ourselves and make new breakthroughs there. Also, setting a cap on your income is something that is a great idea. So we talk about giving pledges, like a 10% giving pledge with giving what you can, or a tithe. A giving cap would be similar to that, but instead of saying how much you pledge to give away, you set a pledge on how much you keep. So that would be different for everybody, but you could set that based off of what needs you expect you'll have in the next year or 5 years. And if you have dependents, of course, you'll factor them into that as well. And if this sounds familiar, it has been said before, and a lot of these ideas I've gotten from Jay, who's in this call, and I hope he'll add to them in the breakout rooms. But Jay has this great fireside chat with Graydon from our last conference, and these 2 points I learned especially from Jay. So the first is to just be massively intentional about major post-university life decisions. And he mentions 3 big ones. One is buying a house. The next is moving into a neighborhood or a new social group or friend group. Or actually, that's the 3rd one. So buying a house, moving to a neighborhood, and adopting a new friend circle. I might have missed one there. I think marriage is also quite important as well. But the thinking is that if you navigate these switches right, and you do it properly, then you don't unknowingly lock yourself into a higher standard of living than you're accustomed to, and a higher a higher debt burden, and just a less ability to give money away to others. So yeah, Jay gives this great example of after he finished medical school, he didn't move into a doctor's neighborhood. He moved into a very everyday neighborhood, and he wasn't thinking about buying the next big car or the next home improvement the way that you might see people thinking about in doctors' neighborhoods. And that really set this right expectation, and really kept him real through that process. But Jay can talk more about that later. Another thing he mentions is giving now over giving later. And this is to combat this tendency that we all have to just push it back, to kick the can down the road. When it comes to giving, we can often rationalize reasons why we don't need to give now. And many of us will say, oh, well, I'll save up for my retirement and then give in my retirement. And that kind of recalls that story, that parable that Jesus tells of people building up barns for the future. And then one day their life is demanded of them. And I think it's very plausible that we can plan to give later, and then one day when we're finally in a position to give quite a lot of money, we've neglected this area of our life for so long that our values have drifted, and other things become more important, whether that's our grandchildren or maybe we do move into a doctor's neighborhood and we start focusing on the bigger cars or other material things. So, but if you start giving now, even if you give in small amounts, you get into this habit of generosity and gratitude, and you realize that, or I guess you're just more frequently reminded that what you have is not your own, that it belongs to God, and that we should really use these resources wisely as stewards of them. And then just to mention in passing, there are some optimization things that you can do to improve your giving. I don't want to go into detail about these because chances are, if you are someone who would benefit a lot from these, you've already looked into them. But if you're interested, I can point you to people who know a lot more about these. So one idea is just tax timing, and when you write off your donations, and how exactly you set up your retirement accounts, and how you claim exemptions. Another way you can do this is through what's called a donor advised fund, which allows you to give, to basically give in a tax preferred way. And this allows you to actually give earlier rather than later, and invest your donations in a fund, and then maybe donate a lot of money one day in the future without the ability of spending it on a non-charitable objective. So that's with giving. I want to transition real quick to career, although I don't want to spend as much time on these. And with career, making career work in everyday life, EA career goals, I think this is a lot more tailored. I think this is going to depend a lot on where you are in life and what your career looks like. Of course, I can't give some of you really specific advice on how to use your time well, or how to do what you are specialized at doing even better. But I think that as a general rule, ADK's advice is really good. So some things they say are, I think we all know of 80,000 hours, but 80,000 hours is this EA group that helps people figure out where or how to use their career to do the most good. So the thinking is you have 80,000 hours in your career, even 1% of that is like 800 hours. So why not spend just close to a few hours researching how you plan your career trajectory. So a few advice pieces that they have. One is just choosing the right major in college, and then also building career capital, not just focusing on doing something that impacts people directly right after college, but thinking about how you can maybe help people in 10 years or 20 years based off of the experience that you're building right now. They also talk about talking to a lot of people and getting experience at doing many different things when you're young, so that you don't pass up an opportunity. They also talk about not following your passion in some kind of blind sense, but doing things that you're good at that help others and that motivate you. Also helpful, I found from them, is just making plans, like have a plan A, which is your dream, sort of your dream path, have a plan B, which is maybe more realistic, and then have a plan C, which is a backup, what you'll do if everything fails, and how much savings you'll need in case we hit a recession and your career plans just really don't work out. I do want to mention again what I said earlier is and this is just me speaking my personal opinion. I think it's possible to blindly follow ADK's advice. And I think that's a bad thing because there are limits to blanket advice for really complicated modern workforce situations and your unique situation and gifting. I think I blindly followed 80,000 hours as advice some 4 years ago. And it wasn't until I actually got individual mentorship from people and I actually talked to people and thought more critically about my unique circumstance that I had a better sense of how to make an effective career work for me day in and day out. And then the third area is just being an example for other people. So I think this is something we all can do every day, right? Where none of us exist in a vacuum. We all exist around other people, and we all have a unique opportunity to share EA ideas with other people and set this positive example. And again, some ideas that Jay had from his talk inspired some points I'm making right now. Some things I've also learned in the last 2 years with EA for Christians has too. One idea is to set the right expectations when you're around other people. This community of people who are Christian and who care about impact, it's very rare. So it's probably helpful to just realize that and not expect that everyone's going to be an effective altruist after setting forward some example. But it's also a reminder that you are something unique. If you're in this call, you are, as someone who cares about giving money, about generosity, you're already in a minority, but someone who wants to do it effectively and with impact and maybe even radically, that's extremely rare. So don't in the one sense, don't expect that everyone's going to take it up right away, but also don't undermine or underplay just how unique you are and what a position you are to be a light to others. And then also finding common ground with other people who care about these things would be helpful. So take someone who cares about homelessness. Maybe we don't think homelessness is the most effective cause area. Maybe there are other much more effective cause areas that are related to that. We can always ask these people, we can always ask our friends and our family, what are the things they care most about that resonate with something God's made them to care about. If they say homelessness, we might find some common ground related to that issue, like human dignity, and then point them to other, what we might think are more effective cause areas related to human dignity, or with health and cancer research. Say we might point them to the underlying health problems that's at the root cause of that, and maybe point them to something like malaria nets. These are just random ideas. So also might want to note some possible misconceptions they have about EA. Yeah, these are some helpful stats, but we covered some stats like this in our quiz a few weeks ago. You can review them there or look at them here, and they wow me every time I read them. Yeah, and then just consistent yet gentle follow-up seems to be really helpful for sharing ideas with people. I think this is tailored with the idea of just having the right expectations, not expecting everybody to be convinced of EA on the first go. So you're also welcome to share our events with people who are interested. So I would very much encourage that. So some questions. The first question is, where could you appreciate practical tips with regard to living out EA? So are there specific ways that you find it really tricky? I sometimes find budgeting really tricky. It's kind of this fine line between budgeting too much and being super stingy about things, but then also having no budget at all and yeah, losing track. Also, second, what tips from this talk or from Jay's fireside chat, if you saw that, do you find most helpful? Do you disagree with any? One thing I would really love to know is how helpful some kind of white paper or report would be if we had some kind of report about how to live out EA in everyday life with regards to these issues. If maybe it's like a 10-pager that we could share. I wonder what tips would be most helpful, and I'm also curious how much you guys would appreciate that. And then, yeah, these questions are really just to get you started. So you can talk about anything really. Sorry, that was a bit